What is the forgotten adoption option? Many are aware of infant international adoption, where you hire an agency, often wait a long time, and spend tens of thousands of dollars. And then there's becoming a foster parent, where you may or may not adopt the children. But there is a third option, where you adopt children directly from the foster care system. I call this the forgotten adoption option. In fact, 30% of children currently in foster care are adoptable, and you don't need to be a traditional foster parent to adopt them. Hi there, I am Marcy Bursack. After blogging my experience adopting a pair of biological siblings through the foster care system, people started asking me to explain the process to them. And it's difficult to navigate, but the families I mentor feel that knowing the barriers, the challenges, and what to expect has actually helped them persevere and pursue their dream of adopting. And while I would love to have a really big family, adopting thousands of children isn't exactly realistic, but I can teach others how. Whether you're trying to figure out how to get started, you're battling some doubts and fears, or maybe you know someone who wants to adopt, I'm here with resources to help others discern if foster care adoption is the path for them. And if it is, I have practical tips and resources for them as well. You can find all of these resources, which include my blog, 3 books, an app, and a classroom lesson at forgottenadoptionoption.com. However you found this podcast, I am so glad that you did. I want to extend an invitation to you to reach out to me to ask anything on your heart. My goal is to help every waiting child be in their forever family. And that's why I host this podcast. Welcome to the Forgotten Adoption Option podcast. In this episode, we're going to discuss the challenges facing youth who age out of the foster care system. As part of researching for my study on non-kin adoptive families who adopt waiting children in foster care, I came across the Child Wellbeing Research Network. Get this, it's comprised of 187 members at 135 universities, research centers, and government agencies that promote child well-being and maltreatment prevention through interdisciplinary research that informs policy and practice. I immediately went to LinkedIn and searched for their director, Lisa Shelby. Hi, Lisa.
Hi, Marcy.
This is so cool. And she was willing to do this episode. So here we are. So Lisa is the Associate Dean of Academic Affairs and an Associate Professor at Florida State University College of Social Work and a faculty affiliate at the Florida Institute for Child Welfare. She's the director of the Child Wellbeing Research Network. And additionally, she serves as the editor-in-chief of the Child and Adolescent Social Work Journal. Isn't she amazing? Her primary research interest focuses broadly on child welfare, child maltreatment prevention, and child well-being, and she published a book called Some Type of Way, Aging Out of Foster Care in 2023. So we're going to get a deep dive with Lisa. She knows a lot. She's got a great personality. I think you all are going to love her. I think I've met my new mentor. So you all get to meet my new mentor too. I am so excited. So Lisa, I saw that you went to Washington University, or known to some WashU, here in St. Louis for your undergraduate degree. Can you share with our listeners what led you into the field of social work and how you ended up as a professor and your focus area is child welfare?
Yeah. So I went to WashU as an undecided major, and soon after I arrived, I became interested in becoming pre-med. I took all the requirements, planned to go to med school. I even took the MCAT exams, the required standardized tests for med school admissions, and I actually, kind of humble brag, did pretty well. But during the summer between my senior year in college, right after I took the MCATs, I worked in a hospital and I hated it.
Oh, no.
I know, right? So planning on being a doctor and you hate the hospital, that's not a good fit. So it was an existential crisis. And I started looking around what I love to do. And I had been volunteering at a program that helps survivors of intimate partner violence. And so I pivoted. And I worked after graduation, I worked at agencies that worked with survivors of intimate partner violence. And then I sort of hit a wall, and I needed to get my master's in social work to be able to do more systems change work. And after I went back to school again, I worked in some agencies, and I realized I'm hitting a wall again, and I want to have a bigger impact. And I thought I could do this best through teaching and research. So I went back to school again, this time for my doctorate. And it was during my studies that I served as a research assistant, and I was interviewing a young person who was aging out of care. And being part of this project and meeting this young woman and the other youth just absolutely made me commit my professional career to young people aging out of foster care. And that's why I'm driven to improve the foster care system and child welfare system and prevent child maltreatment.
Whoa. Okay. So I don't know if you've ever watched The Price is Right. There's this game called Plinko where like you take this like disc and you randomly drop it and it like randomly ends up
Yes.
somewhere. Your journey is so interesting because you were like, I don't know. I went undecided. So I feel better knowing that you as well. I was like, I didn't know what I wanted to do. And you went
Right.
down this like highly admirable path that people know is very rigorous to go into healthcare, to be a doctor, and you did really well in the MCAT. And then you hated it. And instead of
Yeah.
just going into a career field that you hated and sucking it up, you went and found yourself and just pursued things you liked. Lisa, that's so interesting.
Yeah. And I was really fortunate because let me be clear, I'm not sure it's every parent's dream to have their college senior be like, yeah, mom, dad, I'm not sure what I'm going to do with my life. And they're thinking like, get a job. And not that they were pushing me to be a doctor, but they were concerned. And so there was some uh chaos during my existential crisis. But I chose something that worked for me. And then I've continued to take care of or take the chance and find opportunities where I'm a good fit and where I feel I can really make a difference.
And look where it's taken you. That's just, it's such a story for people to think about themselves. Like, it's not too late. Like, if you're unhappy or you don't know what you're doing, you're not alone in any means. So, your book, Some Type of Way Aging Out of Foster Care, it's based on over 90 interviews and almost 1,000 hours where you observed youth aging out. And you give relevant research and theories to help us understand how youth transition out of foster care into adulthood. So before we even get started on kind of who this book is intended for, some of our listeners may be completely unaware of this entire dynamic. So could you kind of paint the picture of like, why do we care about youth aging out of foster care and why do they age out of foster care?
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's one of the main reasons I wrote the book is so that people will understand the experiences of young people as they age out of foster care. So when we talk about aging out of foster care, it's a process. And it is the process by which young people are leaving foster care and transitioning to life on their own. And so typically in most states, this happens at age 18, although in some states it's 21 or up to 24 that they can receive services. So as they are leaving foster care, they are simultaneously entering adulthood. And we know from lots of research, and actually let's be honest, we don't need to know from research. We know from our own lives. We know that at age 18, most of us not ready to live life on our own, right? Um, and so when young people are aging out of foster care, they are needing to develop life skills and to have the support and resources necessary to successfully launch into adulthood. So that's what aging out is, and really the focus of my book.
And so really aging out it for folks that need a little like context here. So let's pretend I'm in foster care and my state says, okay, you're 18. So at age 18, I could potentially stop living in, say, the residential facility or with the foster family, right? And I'm kind of expected to go figure my housing situation out, potentially my job and my education, and I'm just on my own. So I don't
Right.
know about anyone else. Like that was not my personal story, but just thinking about having to live that out feels super overwhelming and a lot to handle. And so now that we've kind of given everyone kind of that baseline, your book, who is it for and why is it important for us to read it?
Yeah, so the book is for anyone who may think they know something about aging out, maybe and wanting to make changes in the system or be an activist. It's also for people that know absolutely nothing. So I feature the stories of 5 young people. So Plato, Solana, Titi, Maddie, and Jaden. And I exclude examples from many other youth. And through the stories, I share what their experiences were like as they entered care, as they were living in foster homes, in kinship placements and group homes, and then how they are negotiating the transitions as they're leaving care. And so the book really explores the complex and complicated challenges that these youth face, as well as their really creative survival strategies and the resilience. And I also weave in information about the service providers' efforts to assist these young people and share the service providers' insights. What I really hope, in addition to sharing the experiences of the young people, is that it highlights some of the limitations of the foster care system and the service delivery system broadly for youth aging out. And I talk about the systemic barriers in society that create a lot of obstacles for these young people. So the book is important for all of us. And at the risk of getting on a soapbox, I just need to share that I see that these young people are not just aging out of care on their own. These are our children. So, as a citizen, my tax dollars fund the child welfare system. And when the state says that a parent's not able to care for a child and places them in out of home care and puts them in foster care, it's my tax dollars that are making this happen. So, ergo, those are my children. These are our children. And in today's world, when kids are entering adulthood, our parents are supporting them. So when these young people are in foster care and they're aging out and entering adulthood, we have a moral responsibility to support them. And even if I'm not convincing you from the moral grounds, and appealing to your empathy, the cost benefit research consistently says that investing in these youth is a great investment and has many significant benefits.
Lisa, that's amazing, all the things that you shared. I loved how you have every angle figured out. And I will say that the other end of that spectrum, so there's those that are about to age out, and then there's those that have aged out. That to me was one of the most surprising yet welcoming groups of people that reached out to me when I started doing my advocacy work in this space. I have a number of people who did not get adopted before they aged out of the system, who have been so favorable and supportive and cheering me on in the work that I'm doing. And so I feel very much like they're my children, even if they're adults, right? There's just very special stories there. And aside for our listeners, this is a fun fact. My children's book, Are You a Forever Family? On the front cover, when my illustrator showed me what she thought, because I gave her pictures of different families that I personally had worked with or that friends had adopted in the space, she gave me a family that was a mom and a dad and then 2 kids. And the kids were about 10 in the photo in this illustration. And I was like, wait a minute, we need a teenager. We need a teenager. And I was like, but it's got to be someone I know. And so I grabbed a photo of actually a former podcast guest, CJ Fox. And I gave it to my illustrator and said, CJ needs to be on the cover. I need that teenager represented. And so it was the coolest moment when I got the revised cover to send it to CJ. And I said, I want to let you know this is you. We need to let everyone see you and to see that opportunity. So Lisa, I love the voice that you're amplifying and the ability for us, taxpayer or caregiver or nothing in the space that we know nothing, that we can all learn about this and be part of creating some sort of better reality for this. And so going deeper into your research findings on youth aging out of foster care, can you help us understand some of the challenges, specific challenges that youth are facing, and then any recommendations on what listeners, whether they're a child welfare worker, a social worker, faculty, adoptive parent, youth that age out of foster care, what can we do to raise awareness and help in this space?
Absolutely. So broadly, the challenges that the young people face, I think, can be summarized as lacking support and resources, and they're not prepared for life on their own as they were aging out. And to be clear, this is not a reflection of their individual failures at all. In the US, most of us aren't independent. We need other people, and this especially is true during the transition to adulthood. Research with young people aging out consistently finds that the challenges are across multiple domains. So housing, employment, education, mental health, early parenting. And my research in this book echoes this previous research. So one of the things in the over 90 interviews and almost 1,000 hours of observation that I started really seeing is there were a lot of complex reciprocal interactions across these domains. And so just if we think about it logically, when a person encounters a problem in one aspect of their lives, it can have cascading effects on the other domains. So a young person losing a job may result in losing housing and then the need to couch surf. And then, under the pressure of the family or friend where the person's staying, a youth may feel that they need to sell drugs or do something illegal. And then they can get a criminal record, which makes it more difficult to get a job. And all of this stress can erode a youth's mental well-being and contribute to health problems. And you can see how these challenges reinforce one another. And all of this is occurring in the larger societal context that is not friendly to these youth trying to navigate life on their own without much guidance. So these youth are living in poverty, and this is challenging every aspect of their well-being. And so like let me share about Jaden. So Jaden's one of the central youth that I share in the book. And when you're introduced to her, she's 19 years old and she's a high school graduate. And I want to be clear, the 5 youth that I focus on, these are typical youth. So these are not the extreme cases. So she is actually almost an extreme case because of how much extra support she has. She's living in her own apartment through an independent living program, and she's trying to re-enroll in college. She's relying on public transportation, which involves a long walk to the bus stop and an hour-long bus ride to a physically demanding job in housekeeping that only pays slightly above minimum wage. She's working tremendously hard, and she has ridiculous grit. She's an absolute inspiration to all of us. And I hate that because I don't want to, say, well, look at these traumas, look at these hardships, and boy, it's an inspiration. But to be honest, she is one of the people that I really look up to. But her problems with money were ridiculous. She opened a credit card at Victoria's Secret, and when she didn't pay it off, it went to collections. And yet, was it her fault for opening the credit card? Or should Victoria's Secret's been allowed to have someone who's living below the poverty level open up a credit card? And we can say that there were other money issues that she should have known better. And I'm putting that in air quotes. She asked for overdraft protection when she opened her bank account because she was afraid that if she used her debit card, that she would overspend. So when she asked for overdraft protection, what she was asking for is that they would not let her spend over what her budget, her balance was. But instead, what they gave her was overdraft protection. So every time she spent, they would just charge her $35. So she quickly amassed several $100s of debt to the bank. And she was already struggling to pay rent and bus passes and meet her daily needs. And so like Jaden's story is like such an example of she's navigating more obstacles than her peers with fewer resources and less support. And if someone had been there to help her open a bank account or counsel her on not opening a credit card or bailing her out, she wouldn't be where she was. And when we leave her at the end of the book, she's about to become homeless and she doesn't know where she's going to go. And it's a tragic thing that this is a young person that the system has failed.
And it's so complex because, like you said, the cascading effects of that it's like, oh, that's just a few $100s. It's like, yeah, but when you're not making a lot and you already have all this other stuff, and to your point of support and resources, there's just so much complexity there. I really appreciate you giving us a specific example. And Lisa, just so our listeners know too, the specific names you use in the book, are they just pseudonyms for people that are real, based on real characters?
Yes, I didn't go into so they're all pseudonyms, and yet all of the facts are accurate. I've changed minor details, so I may say that someone worked in fast food, and I would have replaced Wendy's with Burger King, or vice versa.
That makes so much
but
sense.
It's so that there's some masking. But what's fascinating is that in some of the stories are so similar that it would if she read this story, she may be convinced it's not her because it's so similar. She may be convinced it's her, but so may one of her friends because these stories were just so common.
The themes, because you took time to listen and there's themes. That's beautiful. Man, Lisa, there's just so much there that to learn from the experience of people that are, there's just so much. So I encourage us all. I'm planning on hoping to get a copy and dive into all of that. And so, Lisa, I know that some of our listeners are considering various career paths. They might already be working in something and thinking, man, like I really feel drawn into this work in child welfare. Can you give us some ideas of the types of career possibilities related to helping children in the foster care system and what one might be able to pursue even with the social work degree? I know there's some people are like, is social work really even a degree? I know you hear that all the time. So I would just love if you can dispel that and give people like, there's really needed work in this space and it really can be a viable career path.
Absolutely. There are multiple career opportunities to help children in foster care. I mean, of course, probably the most obvious is working in the system, the foster care or child welfare system as a case manager, as a social worker. And yet here's the honest truth is that children and youth in foster care are like any other children. And so any social work job has the potential to help children in foster care. So that means if you're working with veterans, if you're working with the elderly, if you're working with community-based organizations, if you're working in the schools, and social workers in any setting can champion for the needs of foster care. In fact, I think that it's better if all social workers are cognizant of the needs of children in foster care, and I think that we can make a big difference. And I would also argue there's so many opportunities to help children in foster care that are not social work careers. And so we need doctors and lawyers and politicians and librarians, and we need teachers, and we need all of these people, those who work in the hospitality, those who work in the finance, to understand what it's like to age out, to understand foster care. And so I think that we all just need to do better. We all need to do things, and it doesn't have to be our career. So I actually would love to read something about my thoughts of what we can do. And it's in the conclusion of my book, and
So this is
it's
like
under a
from
section.
your book. We'd love
Yeah,
for you to
so
read
so
your
I'd
book
love
to us. You know, Lisa, this kind of sounds like practice. Like maybe you should make an audiobook. This can be your practice round.
You know what? I think you're going to push me into doing this, and no promises, but I want to get these messages out there. And so this podcast is so helpful, and I think that probably an audiobook would be helpful too. The book was 10 years in the making. I spent 2 years collecting data, but it took me 10 years to get it all there. And so I think maybe I need to take the next step. But let me read this. So it's in the conclusion, and I break down all these suggestions about very concrete about what I think practitioners, policymakers, and the general citizens should do. And my second to the last section is called Do Something. Be kind, reach out, build community, help a family who may be struggling, check in on new parents, fight for equity, promote diversity, speak up against injustices, volunteer at agencies that help children, youth, and families, become a guardian ad litem, provide respite care for foster parents, cook a meal for a foster family, become a foster parent, mentor a child or youth, pursue a career serving children, youth, and families, donate to agencies serving children and youth, attend events promoting well-being for children and youth, support politicians who prioritize child welfare, advocate for children and youth, call a senator or representative, educate ourselves about foster care, talk about foster care with others, write an editorial, fight for change, make a difference, get to know youth aging out of foster care, listen to them. So what this section is basically saying, just do something, figure out what you can do and just do it. And honestly, some of these little things, Marcy, if all of your listeners could just do a couple of these things, or even just starting with one, can you imagine what it would be like if half of the people decided, like, maybe I could cook a meal for a foster family, become a foster parent, or provide respite care? Like, that would be massive. So my big message is that we all can do something, and it doesn't have to be your whole career.
I love that because it's simple. Like there's another podcast guest, Ansel, that came on who adopted a teenager, and he talks about starting small, that we can be overwhelmed really wanting to, like, I know when I kind of really delved into the space, I was like, I should change the system. But I was like, that's going to take like a couple decades. And I don't think it's going to like really make that big of a difference, but we can do something. Before we started recording, Lisa said, Marcy, like, how do you do the things that you do? And I told her, I was like, it's just like 15 minutes here and there. Like my kids are at martial arts, so we're recording right now. And I move my lunch hour around at work, and it's just taking 10 minutes or 30 minutes. And I know you can't like quite prep a meal in 10 minutes, but what you can do is you can like DoorDash those people. Like that takes less than 10 minutes. So there's some really simple things, and even just messaging someone and checking in. I think that's a huge one. Just asking if you can encourage, like, is there anything you need? I just want to let you know I'm thinking about you. Like those words of encouragement go a huge long way. So Lisa, I'm really proud of you for reading the first section of your soon to be audiobook. I'm just going to put that out in the universe for you. So Lisa, as we close, I know you're someone that thinks in vision and future. So I'm really excited to hear your thoughts on this. I'm wondering if you can share, knowing what you know and knowing where you've been and what you hope for and have researched, what do you hope to see improved or different for youth aging out of foster care in the next 1 to 10 years?
So when I think about the future, I have to think about the young people aging out who I had the privilege of knowing. So I think about, Plato, Solano, TT, Maddie, Jaden, and the other youth. And I can't help but think, like, how different could their lives have been had they not been abused under foster care and aged out? How different could their lives have been if there were better prevention efforts and interventions? And we can get better prevention and interventions when we work together. So I think that's where I see that there needs to be more prevention efforts. And then when I think about all this, I'll pause and say, I think the foster care system plays a very important role, and we cannot abolish it. Nevertheless, it is flawed at times, and it does contribute to problems that young people face as they're aging out. And the main things that I see, and I explore in the book and give some really hopefully poignant examples, is that they can some of the system and the policy can create dependency by and not allow young people to have autonomy. And so when young people are in placements where everything is controlled and you can't practice skills that they would need, like managing their money, they don't go grocery shopping, they don't see how to make decisions. And then we assume that when they're on their own, they're going to be able to manage a full paycheck. Well, that's just silly. So we need to make sure that while a youth is in foster care, they have adequate opportunities to practice skills and to make mistakes and learn from them. So if we could have had Jaden learn more about managing her money before she aged out and opened up a credit card and opened her own bank account on her own, it would have been helpful, and it's developmentally appropriate. So I think in foster care, we just need to make sure that we're thinking using a developmental lens, and that we're thinking about skills that help with education and employment. We also really, really, really need to focus on the social connections, and that young people are able to navigate all the social norms, the unwritten rules. I have a chapter called Playing the Game, and looking at like how they are able to navigate what's expected in adulthood. And I'd like to see in foster care reform over the next decade is this recommitment to centering youth voices and ensuring that young people's needs drive the change. And so that we make sure that it's developmentally appropriate, it's something that the young people want. And then we also, like, just going back to prevention, if we can make sure that fewer children and youth end up in foster care, we're better off. We're ahead of the game. So I hope that there's a renewed commitment to child maltreatment prevention.
Lisa, there is so much that you have touched and impacted and been part of. And I feel so grateful to get to hear some of that. I know there's so much more than what we've talked about. And I hope that our listeners have just, maybe this was a lot. And if you just felt like you drank from a fire hose, I feel like we did our job, because there is a whole world of what's going on here. And so, Lisa, we can find your book. I think I saw it on Amazon. Is there anywhere else we can find it?
So any place that sells books. So you can buy it through the publisher, Oxford University Press, but it's available. Your local bookstores can order it. You can, and if you don't want to buy it, you can ask your local libraries to order a copy, and then you are sharing it with your community. So that's an option too. You don't have to buy the book to get your hands on it. Your library should be able to get a copy of it as well.
Gets it into circulation. I love it.
It's
Lisa,
true.
this was delightful. I am so glad for our listeners to hear about the work that you're doing and the impact it's having. I know there are youth that have aged out of foster care that are listening. So on behalf of people that you probably will never meet, that you are inspiring and have impacted, and that you're influencing the system for the better, I just want to tell you thank you from the bottom of my heart that you have devoted your life to this after kind of fumbling through to find your way. You've really made such a significant impact. So I just really, really appreciate you sharing that with us. And I hope that you continue on, and we look forward to the incredible things you're going to continue to teach us.
Listeners, did you know that you've helped the Forgotten Adoption Option podcast rank in the top 30% most followed podcasts on Spotify? You are helping waiting children be seen, and you're teaching our nation how to adopt these children. You can help this podcast reach more future adoptive parents by leaving a review and continuing to share this podcast with others. You can even help others know that instead of Googling to try to figure out how to adopt, they should go to ForgottenAdoptionOption.com, where they can learn the step-by-step process, tips for enduring the journey, and I even have a children's book to celebrate the forever families all around us. It means so much that you took the time to listen to this episode. And on behalf of the 113,000 children who each has a name, a story, and dreams, and deserves to grow up experiencing the love and support that is found in a forever family, I thank you so much for caring.